Before my bed, the moonlight gleams. Can it be frost so sheer and white? I lift my head to find the moon. I lower it and miss my home. This poem is over 1,000 years old, and it is the first thing Where Winds Meet wants you to hear before you set foot in Hexi. Every Chinese person learns it as a child, the way you absorb a lullaby, the way certain words get into your bones before you're old enough to understand why. It is the sound of homesickness in Chinese civilization, the quiet ache of a man alone at night, looking at a moon that is the same moon his family is looking at somewhere far away, and feeling the distance in his chest like a physical thing. The Where Winds Meet team put this poem at the very beginning of the Hexi trailer as a thesis statement, a signal of exactly what this expansion is about. Once you understand why they chose it, once you understand the actual history buried inside this expansion, everything about what's coming on March 6th lands differently. Hexi is doing something genuinely special, and it all starts with a story most of the world has forgotten. The story of the Anshi army. 755 CE. The An Lushan rebellion tears the Tang dynasty open from the inside. A civil war so catastrophic, it would take 8 years and millions of lives to resolve, and from which the empire would never fully recover. To fight the rebellion, Tang does what desperate empires do. It pools its best soldiers from the edges to protect the center. The Anshi army, 40,000 strong at their peak, the sword arm of one of the most powerful empires of its age, controlling territory stretching deep into Central Asia, is stripped of its finest troops and left dangerously exposed on the western frontier. Tibet sees the opening and moves with the kind of speed that changes history. They seize the Hexi corridor, the narrow strip of land connecting China's heartland to the Western territories, and with one strategic move, the road home disappears overnight. Their commander, Guo Xin, surveys what remains of his forces. These men, these sons of the Tang frontier, forged in the dust of Central Asia, looks at the walls of his city and makes a decision that will outlast empires. He holds. What follows is one of the most remarkable stories of loyalty you've probably never heard. Decades pass in complete silence. No supply lines reaching them, no messages getting through, no rescue coming. Just Tang banners flying over a city that the empire they represent can no longer reach, guarded by men who have become something beyond soldiers. Ghosts of a dynasty that doesn't know they're still alive, fighting for a home that has forgotten their names. The Anshi soldiers had no idea Tang had changed emperors. So thoroughly cut off, the decades of imperial succession, new rulers ascending, old ones dying, the entire structure of the empire they served transforming beyond recognition. All of it passed in total silence on the other side of the corridor. And Tang, for their part, had no idea the Anshi army still existed. Two parties perfectly loyal to each other, separated by an enemy-held road, each one uncertain whether the other was still alive. In 783 CE, Tang finally learns, through a Uyghur trade route, that the Anshi army is still standing, still flying Tang colors, still holding. The entire court is stunned into silence, because by any reasonable calculation, those men should have been dead for decades. But Tang is too wounded internally to send real relief. Too many fires burning closer to home. So they do the only thing they can and send Guo Xin an imperial decree. Formal words of praise, the language of an empire that cannot send what it actually owes. No soldiers, no supplies, no rescue. Just words, carried across a corridor that words alone could not reopen. The Anshi army receives the decree somewhere in the western desert. They read it. They understand what it means and what it doesn't mean. And then they fold it away and keep fighting anyway. because that is the only thing left that they know how to do. They hold for decades more, long past the point where holding makes any rational sense. Young men become old men. 10,000 soldiers become 1,000. 1,000 become 100. The faces around the fire change season by season, but the banners above the walls never come down. Eventually, the last city falls. Every soldier who remains dies with white hair. That is why there is a place in this expansion called Bai Tou Cheng, White Hair City, named for the men who held it until they had nothing left to hold with. Those men never went home. They died with their promise intact and their empire out of reach, looking at the same moon that Li Bai looked at, feeling the same distance in their chests, waiting for a rescue that was always one political crisis away from being possible, and therefore never came. This is the ground you are walking into on March 6th. Now you understand why the expansion is called Home Afar. The permanent condition of wanting to be somewhere you cannot reach. The title carrying all that weight in just 2 words. Now you understand why that homesickness poem opens the trailer. And now you understand the dreamscape framing, the surreal imagery throughout, the camels carrying incense burners, the vultures dressed in human clothing, the cities floating in impossible configurations above the desert floor. All of it deliberate. The developers choosing feeling over recreation, building a space where the history can breathe rather than be pinned down. This approach has a name in Chinese artistic tradition, xie yi, the classical painting method, where the goal is capturing what something feels like rather than what it looks like. Loose brushstrokes rather than precise outlines, breathing space between the marks, the emotion underneath the image, because sometimes the emotion is the truer thing. The developers built Hexi this way on purpose. Every landscape a brushstroke, every ruin a suggestion, every moonshot in that trailer a quiet echo of a poem written by a man who also never quite made it home. Which brings us to a quick word from today's sponsor, Enjoy GM. If you're looking to buy echo beads for where winds meet, Enjoy GM supports the game and they're offering discounts compared to official top-up prices. The reason it's cheaper is simple. They operate across different regional markets and pass those savings directly to you. Same echo beads, same account, just less money out of your pocket. The process couldn't be easier. Head to the site, enter your UID, pick your amount, and pay. No account login, no password. Nothing sensitive ever gets shared. And if anything goes wrong, they have 24/7 human customer support ready to help. Thanks to Enjoy GM for supporting the channel. Now, with the history and context painted, let's look at what you're actually walking into on March 6th in concrete terms. Hexi is being framed as the game's largest expansion yet. 3 chapters across 3 separate climates, a huge spread of subregions, new Jianghu legacy questlines, a roster of major bosses across all 3 chapters, and dozens of side quests. The kind of content density that should keep the community fed for months. You access it through a short intro questline that eases you into the dreamscape before it opens fully. Jade Gate Pass launches March 6th. Wind-choked desert, drifting sands, ruins suspended mid-air like the world forgot to finish collapsing. The Western Threshold, the last checkpoint before the known world ended and the frontier began, exactly where the Anshi army watched the road home disappear. Liangzhou opens in April, roughly 4 weeks later. Pale snow plains, a completely different climate, a completely different emotional register, the kind of landscape that changes what silence sounds like when you're standing in it. Qinchuan arrives in May. Ancient mountain paths, open grasslands, the eastern approach, the direction of home, the direction the Anshi army never got to walk. The enemies shift with every landscape too. Different creatures, different ecosystems, each biome feeling like a world with its own identity. Beyond the world itself, Hexi changes how you move through it in ways the base game never attempted. New interaction powers let you physically manipulate the environment, move objects, solve traversal puzzles, engage with the landscape rather than simply passing through it. And then there is the travel system. Where Winds Meet looked at its vast new desert and decided the correct solution was to let you become a fish. Transform completely, glide along glowing channels carved through the sand, and cover ground faster than any mount could manage. A design choice you don't see very often, and based on what Chinese players are reporting, it works beautifully. A free horse mount unlocks through normal zone progression. No payment, no gacha. Just play the game and it's yours. Complete the full map, and the game adds a free outfit exclusive to the region on top of that. After the content drought, the developers understand that the right message right now is generosity, and they are delivering it directly. The combat deserves its own moment. March 6th brings Bamboo Cut, Dust, built around the Everspring umbrella and the unfettered rope dart. From what's been shown, the umbrella is described as half support, half DPS, with exceptional mobility, while the rope dart leans into chaos and crowd control. Fire sparks, wide arc debuffs, enemy grouping. Two weapons that, from the footage, look like they were designed to work as one continuous system. April brings the Hengblade. Think Chinese katana, fast and elegant and devastating, modeled on real historical ring pommel swords excavated from China's Jiangnan region. A new martial art path called Stone Split Strength arrives alongside it, giving players who want close-range power a completely different vocabulary than the umbrella teleport chaos of March. The boss's previews have teased are drawn from Chinese mythology, a figure whose silhouette resembles Nua, the goddess who created humanity and repaired the sky when it shattered. A lightning warrior whose attacks hint at story threads the developers are deliberately leaving unresolved. A white stag crowned with head tentacles. And at the very end of the trailer, a massive lion infused with purple energy, framed like a final confrontation. Many carry multiple phases on legend difficulty, a mythology lesson you have to earn your way through. One more thing worth saying before March 6th. The developers addressed the localization problems directly in a public letter to the community. They acknowledged that Hexi contains so much narrative content rooted in traditional Chinese history and wuxia culture that it required substantially more time on translation and cultural adaptation, and they committed to doing that work properly. They are also going back to improve the existing localization for Qinghe and Kaifeng. This matters because the story only works if the words carry the weight they're supposed to carry. The developers understand that. Whether they got it right is something we find out on March 6th. There are two homecomings happening on March 6th. The first is yours. After the quiet months, after the waiting, after the content drought that tested this community's patience, Where Winds Meet is back, larger and more ambitious than it has ever been, and it has been waiting for you. The second homecoming belongs to men who will never make it, who died with white hair in a city their empire could not reach, their ranks reduced to almost nothing, their banners still flying above walls they had held for decades, who looked at the same moon as their families, across a corridor that politics and war kept closed for the rest of their lives, who kept their promise anyway, simply because that was the kind of men they were. March 6th, you walk the road they couldn't finish. Moonlight before my bed. We're going home.